Hi, this is Kelly Barraza, poetry editor for Underground, Georgia State's undergraduate literary and arts journal. We are here to talk about poetry.
Yes, my name is Christian. I am the miscellaneous editor at Underground, and yeah, we've got a cool little. I guess we're continuing the Black History Month.
I think that is what we're doing.
Yeah. All right.
I mean,
cool.
It's a month.
Yeah,
it's a whole month.
It's
not so much to ask for.
Yeah, right. It's 4 episodes. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. Last week we talked about Langston Hughes, kind of the father of the Harlem Renaissance in a certain way, arguably. Right. We talked about some contemporary poetry, like out of Aziza Barnes, who's very contemporary.
Yeah, that was a good poem. I still think about that.
As we all should. Poetry's in our hearts.
Yeah.
And today we're going to talk about another contemporary poet, sort of a colleague of ours. We've actually published this poem will be out of Underground's latest issue, spring 2015. That is, which one is it? Volume 6, issue 1.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is a pretty great one. I like it. It's definitely something you should visit if you want to see it. I always recommend, I think you agree, Christian, to go look at the actual text.
Yeah,
with your eyeballs if you can.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know about y'all, but like with me, when I hear poetry, a lot of it kind of like goes in one ear out the other. Like I actually have to like see it, which is why like when you're like, we're looking at this, I'm like, all right, hold up, let me get it in front of me. Because like, I don't know, there's also a lot of stuff about like structure and form that you miss that just makes poetry so great. So even if you are someone who can like listen to it, I would still recommend having it in front of you.
Both, I think, listening to it, being read, and also reading it, it just goes hand in hand.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, you can't really, I mean, they're different forms, but it's just a good way to get a fuller understanding of something that's really big.
Agreed.
Yeah. Her poem is called At Recess, and the poet is called Nisa Amani Floyd, who I think we had a class with. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I feel like we did. Sure.
It might have been our Kanye class.
She wasn't in our like project group though, right?
No, she wasn't in our project group, but I feel like I remember seeing her on my list, on the class list or something.
What if we just
when I was creeping on D2L? Sorry, Bright Space. Sorry.
How dare you?
Space
first of all,
Bright.
All right, we got to start this over.
Bright Space is filing a lawsuit against us.
Yeah, right. You mentioned us in a podcast. I'm not okay with that. All right, do you want to go ahead and read the poem?
We will read At Recess by Nisa Amani Floyd. You can see this online because all issues of Underground, the past couple issues, are online, so you can totally access it. At Recess. Tried to understand your white thoughts. Couldn't move in all the smallness. Mud stuck to the bottom of my shoes. Must be white words tied my hair up with a strand of white guilt. My white friends like me now, since I ain't black.
Heard. Yeah, this is pretty much, the struggle. With the title At Recess, I'm assuming, this is a struggle she's been dealing with since she was a young child, being black, growing up around white people. More or less, I had the same exact issues. Tried to understand your white thoughts. I don't know if I would necessarily say it was to that caliber, but I knew I was like different. I knew I was like the black kid, you know what I mean?
This whole othering kind of thing.
Yeah. And, there was always like, people calling me Oreo and stuff, and like, oh, if you're black, why don't you listen to more rap? Stuff like that. And so then you try to, fit in. You try to fit in, but at the end of the day, you're still black. You know what I mean?
Which I think also, I didn't think of this until just a second, but the poem we're going to read after this and talk about is Gwendolyn Brooks' poem. I feel like the little prologue entering quote for that she prefaces the poem with kind of really links to this poem as well.
For sure.
But I think the form of it it's very deceptively sort of simple because if you can see it, it's in couplets. It's just 5 of them, so it's 10 lines, right?
Yeah.
Which I like it. It's kind of that kind of, I feel further is like the duality, like this, you know what I mean?
Right.
And when I think of couplets, I don't know why I always think of like sonnets and stuff, which I know they end in couplets. A lot of them do. So I kind of like that she's sort of like breaking them off into little like structures. And I think the coolest, I'm all about punctuation, is the little period in the last line.
Yeah.
Like, friends like me now, period, since I ain't black. The fact that she like puts that pause in there.
Yeah. Because it's kind of, it's kind of like another like deception. It's like, my friends like me now. Even though we already got the like, satirical kind of tone of it, but like, it's kind of like it's like a punctuation after a punctuation
Mm-hmm.
since I ain't black. Like, oh, well, yeah, that's like kind of wraps everything up into like the meaning of it. So that was kind of dope.
Yeah. And all the capitalization.
Yeah.
I like capitalization. It's hard to pull off.
Yeah. I think sometimes people use capitalization. Like, you think they're Emily Dickinson and they
I like your big side, like people and their capitalization.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, I'm guilty of it too. I mean, and sometimes where I think capitalization works, it doesn't work. But I think it's just a lot of poets in general, they don't know how to use capitalization effectively.
It could come off really goofy when you're not careful with it.
Yeah, it's like, why is that capitalized? With like, I'm just going to Dickinson because she's notorious for like using randomly capitalizing things. But there was also a method. Like, if she wanted to, it was mostly if she wanted to emphasize something or like give a character or quality to something that's like a abstract common noun. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people they'll capitalize like the, and then it's like, why'd you do that? I think just in case you don't have this, the words that are capitalized is white thoughts in the first stanza, bottom in the second stanza, white words in the third stanza, the fourth stanza, white guilt, and black in the fifth stanza.
Mm-hmm.
So
I kind of like that. I mean, to me, I don't know if there's obviously a lot of meanings to different poems and different interpretations of it, but I think obviously white thoughts, white guilt, that to me isn't just like, they're like, it's like thoughts, yes, but also more like the idea of like the projection of, like a quote superior end quote like culture and what they expect out of something. Kind of what I talked about last week, it's about expectation.
Right, exactly.
Like white thoughts, like this is what people think we should act like or be like.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, to me, it's basically saying white supremacy in a way that's not like, oh, it's white supremacy, And
also, like, I like how white and all the ways that it's used is used kind of as a qualifier, whereas black is just all lumped together.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I forgot, there was something that I was watching or something, and it was saying that, at the end of the day, like, as a black person, you're lumped as black. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
This is to me like when I go on Facebook comments.
Mm-hmm. That was your first mistake.
I know, and my last.
Yeah.
Anyway, and there's always like some racist person saying, because they're racist, I'm not going to mince words, they're just racist.
Yeah, they're racist.
And they always say, they don't say, oh, well, if, black voters want it, that's one thing to say, oh, black voters or whatever. But when I say, well, if blacks didn't vote for this, I'm like, please just use it as like an adjective.
Yeah, exactly. Like, the blacks are ruining the country. Like, yeah, that's the worst.
Like you're just a black, not a black voter or a black teacher or a black anything, it's so to me, I like that you touched on something that's really, that's true. White thoughts, white words, they're given, even they're given more depth. They're given
exactly.
more,
like
they're better. They're more diverse than just you being, oh, you're black.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. To the bottom. What is bottom? Why is bottom capitalized?
I was kind of wondering that. But I think bottom is that like, okay, so like mud stuck to the bottom of my shoes. Like the bottom, I think, might be kind of like representative of like the bottom of like, not the food chain, but what I mean, like social
like a hierarchy.
Yeah, there's like a hierarchy, and like so it says tried to understand your white thoughts, couldn't move in all the smallness, mud stuck to the bottom of my shoes. That's like an attachment that she can't shake off. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Mud stuck to the bottom of my shoes. Bottom right there is like,
that's what I am.
Yeah, like, exactly.
And it's a shoe. It is, in that kind of sense, it's her shoe. It's mud stuck to the bottom. And it's very cool. It's recess, which is can very much be taken as a sort of like social Darwinist situation. Kids being kids, i.e. evil, right?
Right.
And then, but like, I think I talked with Charles about this on the very first podcast. You were like, yo, man, kids, though.
Yeah.
Jerks. Anyway, some of them are sweet, but some of them are jerks. Anyway, but, because they're people, I guess. But, what you do with the shoe, you squish someone, you squish a cockroach, you squish a pest,
right?
So it's kind of like a vague symbol of like oppression in a kind of way.
Exactly.
And I think there's like a slight, not even slight, there's definitely like a claustrophobic feel to it. Like she couldn't move in all the smallness. I tied my hair up with a string. It's like she's still like moving herself smaller to a smaller space, right?
Right.
And so I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that, but I just noticed
No,
that.
I mean, it's like you're confined to a small space. And the cool thing is, do you remember reading Homage to My Hips by Lucille Clifton?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is kind of like, not the antithesis, but just kind of like,
it's a companion piece.
yeah, a companion piece,
yeah.
like a kind of like the other side of this.
Yeah, like I'm going to take up space.
Yeah, exactly. You know,
It's
I'm going to move my
poem.
hips, you know, instead of not being able to move in all the smallness.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's her coming into herself as a black woman, whereas here it's like, and this is cool because I guess Lucille Clifton wrote that as a woman. This, I mean, At Recess kind of seems like this is what I was thinking as a kid. And
Mm-hmm.
that's like two different ends of like the age spectrum, like how you kind of grow up,
Mm-hmm.
and then how you feel when you grow up as a black woman. So
yeah,
I think that's pretty
it's
legit.
like this is like the infancy of her experience here, and
Right.
then now we're moving forward to adulthood where Lucille and others would, pitch in about, well, this is how we came out of it.
Right.
So that's pretty cool. I just think it's great. I just love talking about people who we've published in underground,
Right.
and these people our age who are writing and creating work. Because I hate when people are like, well, you could be, it's like some unattainable thing,
Mhm.
poetry. I'm like, it's not. Everyone has poetry.
Well, like, and we're going into another direction, but I think it's an important conversation to have because I think, of course, you're supposed to read the classics. You're supposed to read the people who came before you. But I really and truly think that we place a lot of emphasis on the ones who came before us. And the only thing that we really have to take from those people, besides like their contribution, is that what they were talking about. But like, if you think about it, like, so for example, in my Renaissance Literature 2 class, which I love, shouts out to Dr. Voss. I think I gave him a shouts out last time too. Dr. Voss,
Dr.
you're the
Voss.
man. You are the man. But so we're reading George Herbert, we're reading John Donne, and a lot of those guys, and Shakespeare, obviously, and a lot of those guys, they were writing about love and God, and that's pretty much it. Like love and God, you know what I mean? Like, okay, I get it. I get that, with John Donne, he's like a metaphysical poet. He takes like two unlike things, puts them together, yada, yada. But, since then, there's been so many poets to come after that to do that. And I think, I don't know. I think we have this wrong impression that to be good at poetry or to be like a scholarly poet, you have to like be well versed in the classics. You should know the classics, but like there's so many things today that go widely unread.
Yeah.
Like, so I don't know. I mean, do you?
No, I agree. I agree. I think it's always good to read stuff and read anything, but also definitely the classics and whatever is considered canon.
Mhm.
And that's a loaded thing for me.
Yeah.
Because I think it's racist and sexist,
Yeah.
but that's just me being, super liberal. But
Right.
like,
Yeah.
but why are we talking about white people? It goes as British history. But like, why though? Like,
Yeah. Why? Like literally, I mean, to be fair, it's not like the professors of today can control like what was being published back then. I mean, before like 1900, there were no black poets anywhere. Like, so maybe in Africa, but like.
Well, this is almost like, because things we focus on English literature, but that already itself sort of privileges a certain. That's a whole thing.
Yeah, that's a whole. I mean, I'm mostly speaking like learning about literature in America.
I agree.
Like,
I mean, it's always like an extra thing when you talk about someone who isn't white or who is a woman, or God forbid, a woman of color or something like that.
Yeah, and well, I mean, this is going back to the. I mean, in this case, it's really not even just black people. It's everyone that's a minority. There's this burden of having that label attached to you. We're not just an American poet. We're an African American poet. We're not just an American poet. We're an Asian American poet, Hispanic American poet, et cetera, et cetera. And like, remember when we were in class when we were talking about how Amiri Baraka did not like
the anthropology?
Was it Robert Hayden he was arguing with?
Was it Robert? I think
it was Robert Hayden.
Was he arguing with Robert Hayden, or was he just talking about the anthology?
The anthology. I mean, well, not with Robert Hayden, but he was talking about the anthology, about how in the Black Poets anthology, it's all about oppression, civil rights, the come up, the come up,
the come up,
yeah, the come up,
bless up,
yeah, bless up, yeah. But the come up from like slavery to where
Major
they are
keys.
now, yeah. As it all applies to civil rights. But I forgot what the other anthology was called.
We had.
Not the rap anthology,
Yeah, that's the one. The
Angles of Ascent.
Yes, Angles of Ascent. Yeah.
Where that one was a more all-encompassing collection, where it wasn't just poems about, civil rights. It was Black poetry that encompassed everything. And I think this goes back to what I was saying about, us being attached to a label. When you're a Black poet, you're expected to write about civil rights. That's it. I feel like that's the only time we ever learn about Black poetry is when it applies to civil rights. But then you get stuff like, Those Winter Sundays by Robert Hayden.
Such a beautiful
It's
poem.
a great poem. And that's applicable to anyone. As an American poet, that's applicable to any. It was written like the 50s, right?
Something in that ballpark.
Yeah, and all that whole time, the culture around America was like the dad, provides warmth to the household, which is pretty much the more or less the central theme of that whole poem. Everyone can relate to that. Not to say that everyone can't relate to civil rights and no one can learn from something like that, but we are more than just our struggles,
our particularly race struggle.
Exactly. And that's one thing that I mean, I hope that gets moved forward in the discussion of minority poetry, and I guess in this particular case, black poetry. So
yeah, I agree. I mean, this idea of the function of a poem, kind of it should because Amiri Baraka, who I think has a lot of great stuff, and he's a great poet and a great artist. Problematic in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Several ways.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that we can discredit all of his work.
Right.
Nothing worse than people are like, oh, well, people in my head, imaginary people in my head that I get into arguments with, where I'm like, oh, people gonna criticize Amiri Baraka, but be okay with Woody Allen movies.
Yeah, right.
Come on, y'all.
Exactly.
Or Roman Polanski. You're gonna still watch Roman Polanski movies, but you're not gonna listen to Amiri Baraka because he said maybe something once that was more than a few times that was problematic.
Yeah, okay, exactly.
You need it.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, just as Black people are just always under scrutiny. You got Beyonce, who's getting her butt handed to for. Okay, I'm not going. Ooh,
that's a whole other. We could go in for days.
I could go in on that, but you got Beyonce, who's getting criticized for paying homage to the Black Panthers. You got Cam Newton in the NFL, which I just talked about last week, who's getting criticized for being a quote or sore loser / sore winner when there's white quarterbacks who did that all the time. Every single move by a Black person who's famous is scrutinized. It's scrutinized. I think it's scrutinized more than moves made by white people because I mean, and I don't know.
I agree.
It's scrutinized and overqualified all the time, I think.
It's oh, you shouldn't. I 100% agree. I feel it's super patronizing too. Somebody will treat. Oh, it's. I can just go.
And even there's some. I mean, even with whatchamacallit, who Jada Pinkett when she was speaking out against the Oscars.
The Oscars.
Against the Oscars. I mean, I personally don't necessarily agree with Jada Pinkett because I think she's just mad that her husband didn't win, and they're rich anyway. Yada yada. But then there's so much attention towards a Black person having an opinion about something that's goes against that. That's.
It's amazing to me how this is the thing that gets me. It's how people. Usually white people who will, but sometimes others as well, who kind of get in onto this sort of mind, a group think kind of idea.
Group think, yeah.
Exactly, group think. Anyway,
shouts out.
Group think. That's going to be the name of the podcast. Group think.
If you don't agree with us, stop listening.
Group think it. Anyway, but it's I just forgot what I was going to say. Oh yeah, it's why is everyone so easily offended? The people who I feel are the most offended are those people who keep complaining about everyone being offended.
Yeah.
I feel like those people are the most offended people.
And you know what? When I see people talking about bringing up discussions of race, sexuality, yada yada yada, I don't know if they're doing it to necessarily be offended. They're doing it so that discourse can keep going.
Yeah. Because
for a long time in America, that discourse was ignored, and I think we're just making up for lost time at this point. I will agree to some extent. Sometimes people take it overboard. You know what I mean? There's always going to be extremists, but there's that discourse needs to be persistent. It needs to keep happening because when people are well, let's just stop talking about it. No, because then people's wrong ideas are going to be
it's going to be continued.
Yeah, continued. And if there's not someone to
reinforced.
nip it in the bud, if there's not that constant
They just want to keep the status quo.
Yeah,
of
exactly.
not having to feel slightly uncomfortable, which I think is not even much to ask if you think about it. If you ever walked, a mile in any sort of minority group, whether it's based on ethnicity or gender
right.
or circumstance, class, whatever, that's a lot of discomfort in your life just from something you can't control.
Right,
usually,
exactly.
Right? Something you identify with or you're just born into. And that kind of discomfort that people want to express, well, this is how I feel. I don't feel safe when I'm around police officers.
Exactly.
Or I feel like when I get pulled over, it's not just going to be for a small thing. I feel like I'm going to go to jail or do something, or something worse might happen.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
That's a fear that is an honest fear. And people will say, well, if you weren't acting up a fool, if you weren't trying to attack officers and stuff. But I'm like, people make mistakes, but that doesn't mean that excuses.
Yeah. Well, and furthermore, and I try to tell people this all the time. So we're keeping, by the way, we're keeping the discourse on African American history. So this is not to exclude any other minority that may experience these problems. It's just it's Black history, what I mean? But in the discussion of African Americans, so I'm a firm believer that in order to understand something, you have to realize what led them up to that circumstances, and that inevitably leads to how has their environment been shaped, which pretty much leads from a microscopic scale to a macroscopic scale. Why is this person the way they are? Why is the place they come from the way they are? If we take it back, like, slavery ended like 150 years ago. That's like that's a blink. That's 2 generations ago.
That's like your eyes are still closed from blinking.
Right. Exactly. And like, so that's the first point. And people think that like slavery and like discrimination and racism was this far off thing from now. It really isn't at all. That's literally enough time for grandparents to pass on racism to their children and to their grandchildren.
Yeah, I agree. And this is almost like I'm borrowing another term. This might be, I don't know if this is I'm gonna see if I can make this work. Okay, I'm borrowing another term from like a film class I took about like speed and stuff in movies. It was weird. It was way weird. Anyway, but the word is durée. It's a French word for like duration. And we watched a lot of movies where, oh my God, they were so slow because it's a film class.
Of course. Oh
my God.
Artsy
It
fartsy.
was a pretty good class, but it was a lot. Anyway, and it's like these movies where these people are just super exhausted and and you don't even see them doing anything much in the movies, but it's not just that. It's more like the whole movie is a continuous buildup of, crap that happens to them.
Right.
And you can even assume from that, before that, extrapolate that their life before that was also just one long line of difficulties, you know? So I feel like in that sense, it's not fair to look at, it's just one circumstance. You have to give things context.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about context. And so you had slavery that happened 150 years ago. So that ended in like roughly 1865, and that's not counting like the years afterward. Just like slave owners were like, I'm just not going to give up my slaves because they don't know. So like, you know what I mean? Like, and so then after that, you had years of
literacy laws.
Yeah, you had literacy laws. Not only that, but
which still continue. Not literacy laws, but ways to
hold Black people from voting. That continued to like the 50s, especially for Black women.
No, it's still now. It's in Alabama. People who are 90 years, like there's like stories of people who are like 80 years old grannies, right? Rare grannies.
Shouts out to Chef Rare Granny.
and who have been voting for decades, who probably were born not in a hospital, probably born at home, didn't have birth certificates, all this kind of stuff.
Right.
Old, poor, sometimes not old, but almost insensibly poor, right? Yeah. Living in Alabama specifically, but I think it's some other states as well. And all these, in Georgia, they had that recent law where everyone had to get like 1 million documents to get a driver's license. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Which made me so angry because I had to wait in line for a star on a stupid permit. It was dumb. Yeah. Right? And now the same kind of requirements are going through Alabama, and now and it's for voting, not even for like, it's just a complicated thing. And there's like people who have been voting for 60 plus years who now can't vote. Right. Because they don't have a birth certificate. They can't get that kind of information.
Exactly.
Right? And that, I believe 100% is definitely a move for conservative voters who got to put those laws in, so like that, to limit those kind of votes, because those votes aren't going to vote conservative, probably, at least not on the policy stuff.
Exactly.
So these kind of things probably be like, well, why shouldn't it? It's voter fraud. Like, voter fraud is not a real thing. Yeah. There's like 4 cases of it ever. Yeah. So it's not real. So that's BS thing, and really what you're doing is making it difficult for hundreds, maybe thousands of people where, you know, that is an important vote and that can affect their life because they can't vote, and you are restricting a First Amendment right.
Exactly.
Know? So, sorry, go on.
No, you're totally right. I mean, and so just, you know, bringing it back to like, so, you know, after slavery, we had, you know, literacy laws, we had
grandfather clause.
You had to, there was something stupid where like you had to be able to read a certain document to be able to vote. It was all dumb. And so on top of that, you had a bunch of black people for like a good 40, 50 years who needed jobs. And what happened was that the black men felt like they needed to model their lives after the white men. So they started like kind of like holding black women. Black women had to go work for white families, and children had to be under the mentorship of white people. Okay, so working for white families, being under the mentorship of white people, that's not what it was. It was literally just another way to, it's a loophole so that the slavery mentality can continue.
Yeah.
And so then you get, you know, when the Harlem Renaissance started, you got a little more like black people speaking out, but there's still those literacy laws. There's still hangings by the KKK.
Still the talented 10th, which I feel like, while honorable, and it's, you know, when its creation, the idea of, oh, only 10% of the population is going to be really, really magnificent of this certain population, that already you're putting a limit on something.
Yeah, exactly. And so if we're going to end that whole discourse in the 1950s, which
my
I'm saying,
parents are born in the 50s.
Yeah, which is I'm saying 50s because people tend to think that after the 50s, when the hippie movement started, that's when all like racism seemed to end. Nah, but like even if we did end that there, like you said, there are people that are born in the 50s that were raised by people born in the 20s, in the 1890s, that pass these things on to kids that are our age.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a few generations
adults.
away.
Yeah, exactly. Like racism is, even if it's not in your face, there's still racist mentalities. There's still that undercover racism.
It's more covert. It's not. Sometimes it's not even covert, but most of the time, I mean, sometimes, it's not like directly, oh, if you're not lynching someone, then you can't be racist. Yeah. You can't be actively racist.
Exactly.
Like, what does that even mean?
And so we have this mentality that today, you know, black people need to just get over it. I mean, like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, you know, I don't let that actively, I'm not walking around every day like, oh man, the white man's keeping me down. But I like, you know, I'm like, you know, I recognize that there are things that happen in this world that happen because of stigma towards black people. I mean, we go, this is going to be the last point because we should get to the next one.
I know. We just got on a tangent. Thank you, Miss Floyd.
Yeah, right. But there was this whole discussion, actually within the black community more than anything, about naming your children. Now, I don't think you should be naming your children like, you know, Erica, if it's Erica and you spell it AARWRECKA. I saw that on Facebook. I was like, dude, come on. But like, if a girl's name is Imani, which is like an African name, like that should be perfectly acceptable. If we can learn how to pronounce like Fyodor Dostoevsky or like Tolstoy, we should be able to like pronounce Imani and
I agree.
And Imani, and like, you know, we should be able to accept Ebony and all that stuff, all those black names. But like, there's such a stigma against it. Like,
who's the lady from Orange is the New Black?
The one who plays Crazy Eyes.
Yeah, Uba.
Yeah.
I'm blinking on her because I haven't watched the show. Oh my God, it's coming up soon. But
yeah, true, right? I know you're talking. Uma.
I think it's Uda.
Hold on.
I'm forgetting it now. I feel really bad. This is gonna look really bad about our point.
Hold on. We got
because
this.
she said that thing
Uzo
too.
Aduba.
Okay. Yeah. Was it her or was this someone? Now I feel like I'm mixing up my black actresses. Oh no.
Wow, you're so oppressive, Kelly.
I know, but no, it was more like exactly what you're saying. Like my last name is Barraza, Baraza. I understand it's a little weird looking.
Yeah.
But people say bizarre. I'm like, does a Z come before the R? Does it come? I had a man say Barazza once, and I'm like, I'm not Italian.
Yeah, like.
But that's understandable.
Or like, man, I had this one dude when I was working at my old restaurant. His name, he called the quesadilla the quesadilla. I was like, dude.
What is it, Napoleon Dynamite?
Yeah.
Every time anyone says quesadilla, I think of like the grandma from Napoleon Dynamite. Like, come get your quesadilla.
Come get your dang quesadillas. Yeah. Or like, you know, some people say fajita. I'm like, literally, it's not that hard to like learn how to pronounce something.
Fajita.
Yeah.
At least I think of Dragon Ball.
Dragon Ball Z. Yeah.
I'm like, for me, I'm like, talking about Dragon Ball. Like, oh, you mean a fajita?
Yeah.
Cool.
But that goes into the whole like you don't.
I mean, I can understand kind of mispronouncing some things like that, but if
yeah.
it's someone,
if it's someone's name, it's important.
Like Chimamanda Adichie Ngozi, like very, very, very famous author, probably the most. I shouldn't be saying this. I really don't know much about the history, but probably one of the most, at least globally known Nigerian authors since like flipping, what's his name? Who wrote Chinua Achebe?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know. So, and some people still struggle with that. I'm like, I know it's a mouthful, but you should learn it.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Like if you could pronounce Jeffrey Eugenides, then you can pronounce flipping Chimamanda.
Yeah,
okay.
If you can sing the supercalifragilisticexpialidocious song, you can pronounce his name. Yeah, I'm calling you out, Mary Poppins.
Mary Poppin.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Mary Papa Color. I don't know. All
right.
So
well,
yeah, let's go to the
next poem is Gwenny.
Gwenny Brooks.
Gwenny B-Town. Gwendolyn Brooks. She has 3 of these sermons. And I think they're magnificent and weird, but also really cool and awesome. I think we're just going to start with their first one. Just talk about that, 'cause that's enough. Because if not, we'll be here for many moons.
Yeah, right.
But it's called The Sermon on the Warpland by Gwendolyn Brooks. And you can read it if you want.
Wait, did I read the last one?
No, I did. So go ahead and read it.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. All right. So The Sermon on the Warpland by Gwendolyn Brooks. So it starts off with a quote. "The fact that we are black is our ultimate reality" by Ron Karenga. "In several strengths from drowsiness campaigned, but spoke in single sermon on the warpland, and went about the warpland saying, no, my people, black and black, revile the river, say that the river turns and turn the river. Say that our something in double pod contains seas for the coming hell and health together. Prepare to meet, brothers, sisters, the brash and terrible weather, the pains, the bruising, the collapse of bestials, idols. But then, oh then, the stuffing of the holes, the seasoning of perilously sweet, the health, the heralding of the clear obscure. Build now your church, my brothers, sisters. Build never with brick or corten nor with granite. Build with lithe love, with love like lion eyes, with love like morning rise, with love like black, our black, luminously indiscreet, complete, continuous." Dope.
I love it.
Yeah, that's good.
I love that poem. It's so good.
This reminds me of sort of the Junior Attic, just in a more general form. Like, so it's kind of starts off, and went about the warpland saying, no, my people, black and black, revile the river, say that the river turns and turn the river. I mean, it's kind of like this environment that we have to kind of like adapt to and then react to.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this whole like river image in the second stanza here, it's just so, it's so cool. Like I'm such a fangirl when it comes to this poem, because it just seems really, it seems like almost like a science fiction-y kind of poem to me.
Right.
Like Double Pod, Warpland, like Warpland Chronicles. Like imagine that like it's a cheesy like sci-fi thing, but it's not cheesy. It's amazing. But people saying no, revile the river, see the river turns and turn the river. Like river's capitalized, so there's some of that sneaky capitalization coming in.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is just makes it's very like, to me, I can't even begin to like crack it, because it's really like it's really mysterious to me.
Do you think that this might be like, a call to the Negro Speaks of the Rivers?
I mean, that's what I'm thinking too.
I think that the Negro Speaks of the River is so like, it's such not groundbreaking, but it's kind of like quintessential black poetry that anytime an African American artist like references a river, I think we might be able to safely say that it's references that poem. But I could be wrong. You know what I mean? I could be wrong.
I mean, I think there's definitely echoes of it in there, 100%, because it's kind of speaking collectively about a group, or our group, right? Our, coming prepare to meet sisters, brothers, and that's in parentheticals. So it's like you're kind of saying it, you're kind of directing the audience or narrowing it down that kind of way.
What do you think that okay, so obviously in the third stanza, say that our something in double pod contains C's. Do you think that That's seeds. It's not. It's not supposed to be seeds, right?
Sees. I feel. I think this is sees like when you're seeing something.
Okay. Because when I was reading,
But it
I
could
was
be
like,
wrong. But I feel like it isn't
I feel
wrong.
like I feel like this. Are you on the Poetry Foundation also?
Yeah.
I feel like they wouldn't. I feel like they wouldn't make it wrong, but
I can always look up another one and make sure.
What do you think they're like preparing for in that third stanza? Because like I think what I'm thinking of is like what was it? County Cullen's "If We Must Fight." Was that County Cullen or Claude McKay?
Which one?
If we must fight.
This, we must die.
If we must die. Yeah. If we must die. Yeah.
I think it's McKay.
McKay. Yeah, I think it's McKay. Yeah. Another Google intervention.
Google it.
But because that's what
McKay.
I was. It's McKay. Yes, because that's what I was thinking of. So it says, "Say that our something in double pod contains seeds for the coming hell and health together. Prepare to meet, sisters, brother, the brash and terrible weather, the pains, the bruising, the collapse of bestials, idols. But then, oh then, the stuffing of the holes, the seasoning of the perilously sweet, the health, the heralding of the clear obscure."
Clear obscure. I
love that. That's so good. So I think, well, it kind of extends like that poem. It's like, so Claude McKay was saying, if we must fight, or if we must die, let's go out in a noble man. In a bang. But
Make
here
it
it's
count.
saying that after we prepare to meet the brash and terrible weather, which is obviously, you know, the fight in which you might die, that there's going to be a prosperity afterwards. There's going to be like, there's going to be a reward afterwards. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I don't even think there. And what I like about this is not like a reward, like, oh, everything's gonna be alright. It's like, it's kind of like we're gonna rebuild something.
Yeah.
And make it out of empathy and love and our understanding, and not out of something hard like brick or corten or granite. I think corten is a type of building material, if I remember that correctly. So I think I wrote about that because I wrote about this, you know, for like a paper, all her sermons, and I think I ended up more confused than when I started it. But I might be wrong. But
you know what this also reminds me of? "All Right" by Kendrick Lamar. Yeah, like we should do 2 rap songs next week.
We should. That'd be good. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should do that. But I still don't know if we can play it. So, like, because of copyrights and stuff in YouTube. So I have to.
The very least we can just read it out loud.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, no, this is a great poem.
Yeah, and I love, like, at the end, like, I mean, you know, like, I mean, I think that last stanza is just so dope because it's like, oh, build your church, and it's capitalized, so it's a place of worship.
Yeah, and a place of community.
And community, like, and healing, communitas. Yeah, we talked about this today, actually, in my intro to religious studies class, as well as, like, other things like Full Metal Jacket. Can't wait for next week when we talk about purity balls. I got lots of opinions on those. You know purity balls? What those are?
Is that the ones where you toss them in your fingers?
They're not balls like it's like a ball. Like it's like a prom.
Okay.
It's not a prom. It's like a quinceanera, but super creepy.
Oh, like a ball. Like, oh, okay. Yeah,
purity
I get it.
Ball. It's like a purity ring, but a ball.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like where I'm so off, but it's like where a young girl promises to keep her virginity, and her father is like the protector of her virginity, and they swear it in front of everyone, and they have a big party about it. Like they get dressed up.
Yeah.
It's like a weird rite of passage, but it's not a rite of passage, and it feels really gross to me.
That's kind of like a Freudian, like, that's weird.
That's why I don't like all those kind of, that's honestly, and even from when I was young, I hate this kind of idea where like, well, I got a shotgun from my daughter's boyfriend if he acts up, and I'm like,
yeah,
you don't need to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Or like, you know, get a man like your dad. Like, no,
that's not.
It's like I hate, which is so stupid. I don't even know if this is scientifically supported, but even if it is, I don't want to think about it. How like, oh, guys find women like their mom and girls find men like their dads. Like, that's stupid. And also
it's
just
also
like
heteronormative too.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. It's so heteronormative, and it's like, yeah, it's stupid.
Yeah, it's weird. But I mean, I'll go on a tangent, but church, I mean, it's a sacred space, but also I think in this, we talk about today about liminal space, you know, between two worlds, and in that space, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
To society, the status quo.
Right.
Because in that space, that's when the transformation happens. So we're in a liminal space. Like, let's say when you graduate college and you don't have a job for a couple months, you're a bit of a danger to society because you're not acclimated to the normal working force.
Right.
You know, you could, what can happen? What if you never find a job? You can be unemployed forever, take unemployment, or you might riot or something crazy. And that's a danger to the status quo where everyone goes to school, gets a job, lives normal humdrum lives, right?
Yeah.
And this liminal space, at least in the religious context, is kind of this idea of like, well, this is where all these creative cultural things happen. And I feel like this poem lives in this space. Clear, obscure, a lot of poetry does, which I probably why we're all drawn to it, because it kind of speaks to those anxieties and those tensions and that live in that space. But the church, it's a religious thing at the end. And when you're in this sort of space where, you know, it's kind of like liminal and anything could happen, it's called like communitas, right? Yeah. And so your sisters, your brothers, it's like building out your church. Now they're creating something new,
right? Which
I think is going to counter the status quo. And they're not going to build out of physical things like brick and granite, things that, you know, block off things and make things physical and like non-changing. Because when it's brick, it's just there. She's a brick house. That's it. You know?
Yeah.
I.e., she's a bitch forever.
Right, exactly.
I don't even know if that's not even the song, but I'm like, I don't know why. Anyway, but they're like built with life, love, life. Is that the river of life? Is that when you forget things or something? Or that's Lee.
Yeah.
What's life mean?
I'm not entirely sure. We can also look that up.
Okay, life, love like lion eyes, right? Lion's also like I feel like she uses a lot of lines in her poetry.
Yeah, she does. Lithe, especially of a person's body, is thin, supple, and graceful.
Okay, cool. Life. So something morning rise is like it's not a thing. I mean, it's a thing, but it's not like a thing you hold in your hand, right?
It's intangible.
Yeah, and that's what I think she's kind of moving for in this poem in the end. She's not saying don't worry about things that are sort of. It's kind of like with Adiza Barnes from last week. Oh, this idea that anything lasts, right?
Right, exactly.
No, it doesn't. Things are impermanent and they're always in a rate of flux and change, and we should embrace it and make that our mantra in a kind of way,
right?
You know. Like nothing's impermanent. Everything's permanent, you know. I think that was a line in one of my poems once. All things are impermanent.
I might have. It wasn't published though, was it?
It was published in the Allegheny Review.
Okay.
And it was, I think, the first one of the poems is like all things are impermanent, like the Buddha says, like Madonna says, like auditors say.
Nice.
It was just, I was like, not, you know.
Yeah.
But she also kind of couples that sort of. And this is where I think it works on two forms. Because on one hand, you can look at it as just generally, everything changes. You got to accept that and move with your life, because otherwise you can't function. But also, there's with love like black, our black, luminously indiscreet, complete, continuous. Right. And that to me is super beautiful.
That is beautiful.
Beautiful and powerful, and not like a punch in the face, but kind of like in your gut a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It's just.
It's not like. Militant, but it's very like
it's assertive.
Yeah, exactly. It's very assertive.
It's affirming.
Exactly.
It's a really. I mean, I don't think poems have to be positive. Nobody has to be positive. No one has to say, "Oh, this is a happy story." I don't think that's beholden to any poet.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's nice to see something that's like, look, there's gonna be some troubles, but let's not make troubles our status quo. Let's try to change it.
Exactly.
And look to creating something instead of just always destroying or something, I don't know. Or at least look at destruction as an opportunity to create something.
I could see this as like, I mean, maybe not. I mean, it doesn't have the structure of like the blues, but it's definitely like got blues sense in that like it lays down a sad like foundation. And then in a lot of blues songs, there's like at least a little glimmer of hope in the end. If it's just like, well, I'm just gonna keep drinking or something, like like it's like, well, this sucks, but at least I got my beer. You know what I mean? So
I feel like when I come from class, I'm like, this sucked, but I had that $4 wine in the fridge.
Right. True.
I always want to call my fridge the refridge for some reason.
The refridge.
I don't know. My dad got me a 4-bottle, which I think is the exact sweet spot. For the price of wine, a wine bottle is $4.
True.
Any lower than that, that's not wine.
Any higher than that, it's like you're pretentious.
Yo.
Yeah. Yeah, we can get into wine pretentiousness, because we should get poems about wine, and then afterwards just discuss how wine.
You should talk about. Go on. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I was just gonna say how wine enthusiasts are just like.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, yeah, they are obnoxious, but I mean, it's nice to let loose. But like Dionysus.
If you can learn how to say Gwendolyn, you can learn how to say Dionysus.
Gwenny. Gwenny from the brook.
Oh, no.
I did it. I wish we had like a sound where that would make like noises like boing.
Boing.
Like, hi-ya-ya, I don't know, something weird. But like, yeah, like, I forgot. Like, that's like the god of like, what, wine and debauchery or something?
Yeah.
That's not the god of poetry. That's Apollo. Apollo's the one of poetry and music, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But he also got turned up, I think. I don't know. But, yeah, I was going to say Lilac Wine by Nina Simone. I mean, it's not by Nina Simone because there's like a billion versions of it, but she did a cover of it. And it's one of my favorite songs. Lilac Wine. That's not how she sings it.
This is poetry / song peeps.
Songs aren't poems.
Yeah, they really
poems
are.
Poems are songs. I think there's lyrics to.
I mean, before poetry, there was songs. Like
they were the one and the same.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oral tradition. So everything that was once written, that's now written, was once sung or spoke. So. Spoken.
I don't be speaking that foreign languages. That's not American. Coming here speaking that.
You hear? That's the video of that little girl. Did you see that?
No.
Oh, never mind. There was like a vine or something of a girl, like a 12-year-old. So she's young. Mm-hmm. She doesn't know what she's talking about. And she's like, don't even speak American, French. What is that? And it's like, it's another language, young child. There's many of them.
She like learned that from her parents too.
I know, which makes you feel worse. But it's also like you shouldn't have a phone and it's a camera that works, kicks the internet.
Yeah.
Like,
yo, kids are having fun. Hold on, let's not get off topic. Let's wrap this up. It's 46 minutes because I don't want to like have like a bunch of stuff to edit at the end. That's like we don't need any of this. Sorry.
No, it's all right.
Is there anything else?
Kids these days.
Kids these days. That is what we're ending this with. It started with Black History, and now we're preaching to the kids.
Everything is Black History. Everything is poetry.
Exactly.
I mean, I agree with both statements though.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's dumb to divorce one from the other. I got real serious for
a
second,
yeah.
but like I just made myself think.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
when
you be joking, but then you be serious at the same time. Yeah, like yo, that was real talk though.
Real talk.
I'm gonna think about that tonight. All right, is there anything else you wanted to say?
I think that's pretty much it for today.
Okay.
Got a lot out of Floyd and Brooks today, so
yeah,
a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, I thought this was once again another great podcast. Also, yeah, like I'm excited.
Pop poetry,
poetry, pop peeps.
Poetry, pop peeps, peep pops,
peep pop. Yo, that sounds like a really good like popsicle though.
Peep pops,
peep pops.
Yeah, I got Minion peeps for Christmas.
Oh my god, I hate Minions.
My boyfriend's relatives, which is really fun. They got me so many things. They're so sweet, but I was like, why?
Yeah, like Minions are everywhere. Like, why are there Minion? Okay, my name's Christian, and
my name is Kelly. This has been Poetry Peeps / Pop Poetry / The Lyric Hour.
Yeah, and we will see you next week. Take care.
All right, bye.